I've almost done too much with the body. I need to stop. I need to just walk away. I need to take a step back. I need to pause, give them space. And I let them tell me when they want to continue. Maybe they don't want to continue for the day, and that's also fine. Taking away the expectation, allowing and being very aware. See, your horse will tell you when they've had enough for the day. They'll show you when they're maybe overstimulated, overwhelmed. I don't know if overwhelmed is more of a human term. And they'll let you know when they actually need to take a break. The better we are at reading these signs. He was one of these horses that, to this day, I am so grateful for all the tears, frustration, heartache, success, challenge that he put me through. It was all, in hindsight, meant to be. But during the time it was so frustrating, this horse taught me about groundwork, because you might be a very good rider. I could definitely ride. I had a load of experience. I was doing pre-St. George dressage and I was loving training. But the riding wasn't what this horse needed. He needed trust. He needed to really build that connection and relationship. And the groundwork made absolutely everything easier. So if you're in this position that I was, I'm going to tell you today to not skip groundwork. Never rush. Never think of groundwork as the basic step. It's actually the real work. And this is where the real work begins, to your trust and really developing that connection under saddle. Groundwork is where you build the timing, you build your feel, you can build balance. It's where your horse actually learns that they can trust you. Most of the cues that we can teach our horses from the ground can then be done when we're on board, making the whole riding process just so much easier. It's actually where you learn to read what your horse is telling you. You really get to know their body and who they are before you're on their back. Everything you establish on the ground transitions to being ridden. Every single cue, every release, every try, every moment of understanding. This is episode 2 of the Horse Listener series. I'm doing 7 in total. If you've not already watched episode number 1, go back and watch it. Today, I'm going to be deep diving into the foundations that make everything else possible. Groundwork, relationship, trust, and a story about a moment on a cliff that taught me horses understand us far better than we are taught they can. Here's a quote that I'm going to share with you. The outside of a horse is the best medicine for the inside of a human. I'll say it again. The outside of a horse is the best medicine for the inside of a human. So many of us know this. We feel it every time we're with our horses. But then there's others who approach horses like, horses have to be there to do something for them, to serve a purpose, to fulfill a need. But horses are here to teach us, and they actually make us better human beings. The groundwork is where those teachings really begin. Before you even get on, before your legs are around a horse, you're building a language that you can use together. You're establishing boundaries, trust, and communication. You're actually learning to see your horse and see what your horse is showing you. So the first part of this episode is about what groundwork actually builds. Because when people ask me what they should focus on in groundwork, I actually don't tell them about a specific pole exercise and, go and lunge your horse for 20 minutes. It's actually about timing, feel, and balance. Not exercises, not drills, not making your horse go through movements, not making them fitter by lunging them round and round and round and round. It shows you the timing. Timing is knowing when to release, take the pressure off. It's knowing when to ask, it's knowing when to wait. The feel is sensing what your horse is carrying, the tension, the confusion, the willingness, when they soften, before it shows up in a big and obvious way. And this goes into yourself as well. So before you ask your horse a question, check in with yourself. How are you today? How are you feeling? How's your state? How is your energy? What are you bringing to the horse today? And the third one is balance. So it's like a dance between you and your horse. It's the best way I can describe it. I'm someone who used to do ballet when I was younger. And in the ballet, it was all about finding your balance through your body, connecting the mind and the body, your breath. And with you and your horse, it's a dance between two. Who's leading this time? Where's the pressure? Groundwork gives you that time and space to develop these without the complication of riding. And when you're on the ground, you can see so much more. Oh my God, this horse that I was telling you about at the beginning of this episode, I saw him in a totally different light the moment I started doing more groundwork. I could see when he was reacting, and I could see the moments of relaxation, which translated to being on board. I realized and learned about his pause and the importance of processing together without worrying about staying collected, staying in the perfect frame. The skills you build here really transfers directly to your riding. So if you can't communicate clearly on the ground, you won't be able to communicate clearly in the saddle. It's that simple. Groundwork starts with the foundations, simple things that most of us can overlook and rush through. Even things like, before you work your horse, like grooming, putting the halter on, taking the halter off, leading your horse to the arena. All of these signs start to tell you how your horse is, how you are. They aren't chores, they're actually part of this communication. They're part of the relationship that we want, this effortless relationship that we're all seeking. So every time you approach your horse to put your halter on, ask, can I come into your space? Will you accept this from me? Every time you lead a horse, you're establishing, here's how we move together, here's the pace, here's the feel. Pay attention to these moments, because they are where the relationship really begins. I remember with this Lusitano how it would vary. Some weeks were good, some weeks weren't good. And I saw a lot of it from the moment I stepped into his stable. And that's that recognizing, that's that building the trust, building the foundations of understanding that, oh, you're not quite the same as you were yesterday. Right, I'm not going to ask you the same questions. The second part of this episode is your personal space and boundaries. And this is going to be very different for each and every one of you watching. It's different from myself, because we all have our own boundaries and we all have our own stories and needs and wants and desires in a relationship. Your horse won't be any different. Personal space is one of the most important aspects of groundwork, because safety, you're working with an animal, an unpredictable animal, and it's where I see the most confusion. So you watch your horse when you're working together. Are they pushing into you? Are they moving you around? Even recently I've been working with a lady in the UK who has had a horse that's been really struggling with his energy, very anxious, very nervous. And don't get me wrong, she absolutely loves him to bits, but he is invading her personal space. So even the nodding of the head, the rubbing of the head on your face, they can hurt you. That is coming into your space. So setting your boundaries there is really important. Be aware of who is taking over who. There has to be safety. There has to be an understanding on both sides. And you need to set the clear boundaries. You need to say when it is okay and when it's not okay. The clearer you are with your intention and knowing what your personal boundaries are, the clearer it'll be to your horse. On the other side of this, you have a relationship that you don't want to push your horse away constantly. And I see this as well, where, especially when I started doing horsemanship, natural horsemanship from the ground, and I would push too much. When we push away too much, we create distance instead of connection. Imagine a relationship. If someone keeps pushing you away, you're not going to voluntarily come closer and closer, because you're getting the message. And a lot of trainers will tell you to make your horse respect your space by pushing them away every time they step too close. And it might work for some horses, but if you don't understand the timing and you don't read the horse, your horse will start to learn where the boundary is, and they'll also learn that the closeness equals a correction, and so they will be further and further away from you. What if you could find another way to communicate this? What if you slowed down? What if you took a pause? What if you spend some time with yourself first and understand where your boundary was before you expected your horse to know where your boundary was, okay? When horses are frightened, they move toward us for safety. If they're trained, that's personal space, coming into you is off limits no matter what, we've just removed their safest option in a scary moment. So what do? They fly and they get away from you as far as they can. That is a human response. My preferred way now is to teach my horses that my space is available when they need it and when I need them to move away. And I ask them with the slightest cue possible to reward the moment that they do shift. And this creates a horse that chooses to come near me not one who stays away from me because of fear of a correction. So the third segment to this episode is timing and trust, okay? One of the biggest mistakes I made in my groundwork was rushing, okay? Treating groundwork like a training session of, must get fit, a horse must work its core. Big mistake. And I see this a lot with riders nowadays. It's actually what I teach in the Horse Listener. So it's actually teaching riders, teaching horse. I work with a lot of women actually to understand that groundwork with your horse is an opportunity. Groundwork with your horse is part of your relationship. It's not just a case of working your horse to make them stronger and fitter. Horses need time to understand, time to process, think, and to decide. So when you give your horse that time and also giving them the respect, you're saying, okay, I trust you to figure this out. I'm not going to force you. You have a choice. I'm going to wait here until you find the answer. That's what builds confidence. Confidence in themselves and confidence in you. See, I watch this in my horses when they need a moment. So it might be from a treatment from a chiropractic perspective, or when I'm riding them now, where I'm like, they're too close to shutting down. The clearer the communication will be, and that builds trust, builds those signals for the horse and you to come together. I really want to share a story with you about, it's not my story, it's a story from a lady who was on her Arab young horse, and she asked where she could go for a ride that had amazing views. And the yard said, yeah, it's quite a hack, a trail ride, but you get to the top of the cliff and there's some amazing views looking over the kind of valley river. Honestly, this story just gave me shudders. So she was probably 40 minutes in and the views were amazing, bright blue sky, warm, summer's day. The sun was glistening over the water, it looked incredible, and obviously it was getting steeper and steeper. And she got to the point where she was like, this is getting a lot narrower. That inner voice comes in, that inner horse voice, I call it, in your body goes, maybe we should stop. And then you go, nah, let's keep going, right? And very quickly got to the end of this cliff and there was no way to turn around or to go forward. And she had a moment of so on the right side of her was a sheer cliff, as in going upwards. To the left of her was a drop down, about 500 meters down into the valley. And her and a horse were on this path. You couldn't jump off the horse because she would have gone straight down. It was very narrow. She couldn't ask a horse to rein back. He was a young horse and he would have lost his footing because it wasn't a straight back path. She couldn't go forward. And she was like, oh my God, I've just ended my horse and myself in a very dangerous situation. I'm stuck. I don't know if you've ever had this moment. I've not had this exact experience on a cliff. But where you've gone, oh my God, I take full responsibility for what I've done to my horse and I can't get us out of here. And so she actually completely surrendered. She placed one hand on the horse's shoulder. She leant forward and just said to him, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I got us in this situation. And if there's anything you can do right now, it's up to you. And I'm just so sorry. She leaned forward. And after about a few minutes, she said, the horse leant back on his haunches, so going back on his hocks, reared up, had to be so careful with his placement of his hind feet because the path was so narrow. And then facing the cliff edge, with his front feet on the cliff edge, placed them one by one as he moved around and then landed the right way to get them out. I mean, how incredible is that story? Just how incredible is that story? When I heard it, I actually listened to it a few times because I was just in complete amazement. And to be honest, I've always known that horses can help us and hear us and understand us from a heart perspective, but the mind, right? This horse figured this out. They understand us far better than we're actually taught. They feel our fear, they feel our intentions, and they sense when we're in trouble. So the last segment is about relationship. And groundwork is where you define your relationship with your horse. A really well-renowned trainer, I'm sure you've heard of him, Mark Rushford, a horseman that I deeply respect, says, how do you think the horse feels? So when I start working with horses, I never actually, this is the very early days, I never actually thought, oh, how's the horse feeling? Because you're always, I suppose, taught to do something with your horse, be practical, train them, ride them. And then it was only when I started working with more like misunderstood horses that people label as behavioral that I started to ask myself that question. How's the horse feeling? And now I can't stop asking it. No matter where I go, no matter where I am in the world, it's the first thing I think to myself is, what's the horse thinking? I listen to the owners and they tell me their stories and the training history and previous problems, and that's obviously very important. But before I do anything, I always stop and ask the horse, so how are you today? It's not really out loud, it's in my awareness and my intention, and I do truly believe they feel and understand me. What are you showing me right now? Are they relaxed? Are they tense? Are they shut down? There's so many things they could be. True love with a horse isn't about what you get from them, it's about what you give them. And space to be themselves, permission to say no, respecting their boundaries, trusting their intelligence. When you approach your groundwork, your written work in this way, the relationship, the communication completely transforms. You're not training a horse to obey. You're building a partnership where both of you have agency. Now that's the kind of relationship that truly lasts. That's the kind of connection for me and the ladies I work with around the world that really transforms both horse and rider. Groundwork is just the preparation. It's where you build timing, feel, balance. It's where that trust develops. It's where your horse leans into what you're doing, into becoming a horse listener, for you to show them. The horse world doesn't need anything bigger, doesn't need more. I think we just need to get better. We need to get better at communicating. We need to get better at listening, being present. And this is what horses can teach us. They are such sentient beings, so patient, such incredible teachers, and they forgive so much. But why should they keep forgiving our human mistakes? What if we stopped needing that forgiveness? And what if we listened the first time? In the next episode, I'm going to explore more of this, going into tack, going into more experiences as a chiropractic. Thank you for being here. If you haven't already, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe, and any questions, just leave in the comments below.